Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another of my interview series. Today I'm back in the studio and I have a guest, Citizen X. Hello, Citizen X. Do you ever reveal your real name, or are you always Citizen X on your YouTube channel?
No, I do reveal my name actually.
So I can call you Steve.
You can call me Steve if you like. It's not a big secret.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, you never quite know, do you, with YouTube channels? Some people like to be completely anonymous.
Yeah.
They only like to have graphics. They don't like to say who they are. And then other people like me put themselves right above the parapet.
Yeah.
And
there's no turning back now.
And there's no turning back. And yeah, the sad thing is people can find out where I live by just looking at Google Images, because the truck went past and saw me sitting there. It's like, oh, but that's all right. You've seen my house. There's not much to nick. So anyway, welcome to the channel. It's very nice. Citizen X has his own channel in which he espouses a whole load of conspiracy nonsense, apparently. A bit like me, according to certain fractions of society. So, but we don't see it like that.
We don't. No,
we don't. We're somewhat worried and concerned about the stuff that's coming down at us. Tell us about your journey then, how you started to wake up to what was going on, and then what made you decide to do a YouTube channel about it.
It was very, very slow burn actually, and I have to say that I would thank my some of my education in exposing me to George Orwell's 1984, which I read when I was about 15 or so. And then it just sort of simmered there without really doing anything, and I would continue to go about my life believing I lived in a properly free country. And then I read another book in my early 20s. It was a legal textbook. It was called Freedom, the Individual and the Law.
Freedom, the Individual and the Law,
by a chap called Geoffrey Robertson, who is maybe even still is a barrister. But it was, I think they reissue the book every few years, so I imagine it's quite a thicker book now than it used to be. And he one by one went through all these different examples as to why we're not actually free.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and or at least not as free as we thought.
Yeah. And
that was the beginning of, and building on the 1984 thing, I began to look at those two things in the same vein, I suppose. And then of course I'd got my driving license when I was 17, like a lot of other people.
Yeah. And
I would find it's strange because when I was driving, this was the days before mobile phones, of course.
Yeah.
And if you were between one place and another, nobody knew where you were.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it was, in a very real sense, I felt free.
Yes.
In that. And
although we didn't really have anything to compare it with, did we? Because it was just life.
Exactly. It was the natural state.
Yeah.
This is what. Of course, nobody knows where I am. Within those two locations, and then I started to hear about automatic number plate recognition, which is, and I don't know if most people know about this, but this is the network of cameras that the police started to put up in 2002. Firstly on motorways and then other main roads, and now they're almost everywhere.
Yes.
And quite a lot went up during the pandemic, which is unsurprising, and I did notice them. And so every time I go into my local town, somebody I don't know and have not given permission to know knows where I've been, and I find that to be sort of unacceptable. But of course that was during the pandemic. But I started to the expanding of the surveillance state got me more and more vexed as time went on, and I felt I had to say something. So that's when I first did my first YouTube channel.
And how did it go down when you started to talk about this kind of thing?
Well, initially it was, I get 30, 40 views, nothing at all really, and then Jordan Peterson came on the scene, and I was kind of inspired by him, and I made a video which was a big hitter about, because it had Jordan Peterson in the title, and so that sort of went viral, and I had several 100,000 views on that. And then of course my subscriber numbers went up to sort of 10,000 or so, and then they built up to 15,000, and well, they haven't gone up any since, but that's, you know, I got lots of decent feedback and found lots of people that I realised did agree with me. And of course it only got turbocharged by the pandemic.
Yeah. It's interesting what you were saying about these cameras that can recognise your number plate, yet you still hear the stories of the police finding, not through these number plates, people who are uninsured or not MOT'd, you know, and you think, isn't that what they were originally for? To try and stop people driving illegally on the roads, or in dangerous cars, or not being insured, so that if you have an accident. And yet they don't seem to be, you know, they don't seem to be policing that aspect of it. It's more the surveillance of where are you going and what have you been doing.
Yeah, you're sort of suggesting that they might have been used for, you know, crime detection.
Yeah,
but it seems that's not the case.
That's not the case.
No, it seems that it's the main purpose is just for surveillance for its own sake.
Yeah,
it seems to be to me.
And of course the argument is always that it's the surveillance is there to help us and prevent criminal activities going on. So if you know your child is kidnapped, they'll be able to track the car down very quickly. Or if your car is stolen, I suppose, although the police don't really seem to be bothered if your car is stolen these days. But all of that, sorry, my foot slipped. All of that seems to be irrelevant, really. It's more about where you are at any one time, which is, you know, that goes back to that 1984 thing.
Yeah, and it's always the promise of surveillance is that it's there for our safety and to catch murderers and rapists and all the rest of it. But I mean, if you look at all the horrors that have been going on in Rotherham and Telford and Rochdale and all those places, I mean, the surveillance state was, you know, in place then.
Yes.
And for decades they did nothing about it.
And they must have got the footage, or must have been observing the footage of those poor girls being taken and placed into cars and driven to places in which they could follow. And yet those horrific crimes were just swept under the carpet.
Exactly, yeah. But you go 5 miles out over the speed limit or drive in a bus lane, and they're on you immediately.
Yes,
immediately.
And
it is extremely efficient in that way.
Yes.
In that way, but it's not efficient at all in regards to dealing with serious crime. So I think that kind of tells us what it's there for. And it does give the lie to the idea that surveillance is in some way good for us.
Yes, it's more of a cash cow, isn't it? All the way, or controlling you to ensure that you adhere to certain speed limits. Not suggesting that people wouldn't adhere to certain speed limits, but it's that element of control on the motorway where, again, and I talk about this so much, our natural ability to be responsible for ourselves is somewhat taken away. And if you go 1 or 2 miles an hour over a speed limit, you're being penalised instead of just sort of saying, look, you know, just we notice you've driven a little bit fast over the last couple of weeks. Can you just steady yourself down a bit? Which would be rather than just going slap, you know. And if you do it again, your car's going. You've got to go on the "you've been a bad boy" course, which just continually keeps you down.
Well, you're not to be trusted. You know, people are not to be trusted. That's why we need the surveillance state, to keep everybody in line, because people are just so irresponsible that they just cannot be trusted.
You're guilty before, you know, and of course the law is supposed to be that you're innocent until proved guilty.
And that's what the surveillance state turns on its head. It turns everybody into guilty people who then have to prove their innocence.
Yes.
And we have to account for ourselves. I mean, I will also like to note that automatic number plate recognition was not brought in. There's been no Act of Parliament. There was never an Act of Parliament.
Oh, really?
No. So to my perhaps ignorant and ill-informed mind, makes it illegitimate to me. if not to say illegal. And yet there it is.
Well, that's very interesting because I've got a chap coming on, I think it's tomorrow, a chap called Chris Coverdale, who's... He has this... Well, it is obviously, and there is a act that says you should not be giving money to anybody that does criminal activities. So there's an act that covers that. So it's illegal to give somebody who's going to use that money for illegal purposes. So it would be illegal for you to do that. If it turns out, and he says it has been proved several times, just as you say, that the government are doing illegal things through a number of these processes that have come in that has no act of parliament, etc., then it becomes illegal for you to give them the money to do it, which in his case, and I'll be talking to him about this, about paying your council tax, because you're giving the government effectively money. Well, it's illegal then, he says, to give your council tax. You may want to be a law-abiding citizen, but if it's illegal to give another corporation or anybody your money because they are using it for illegal purposes, you technically could be taken to court. And as a legal abiding person myself,
you wouldn't want to do that.
I wouldn't want to risk that.
Exactly, yeah.
So, you're in a quandary. Should you pay or shouldn't you? And of course, most people will say, well, of course you should pay, because otherwise they'll come and get you. And then you go, but if it's illegal to do it, then maybe I shouldn't. So, and there are a whole load of things that I think Chris is going to talk about, which I'm going to find interesting. But it's interesting what you say there about the fact that this has been brought in. But again, it's even if there were acts being passed, my beef is that as a member of the community, somebody who's voting for the governments, and that they've given you a manifesto, the minute they sort of do things that are not on their manifesto, or big things like 15-minute cities, and they don't ask you first, and they don't say, well, actually, we'll ask the whole country, do you want this? Would you like to be pushed into a camp of some description in which you can't, they might put it in more friendly terms, of course, but if they asked you, is this what you would like, and people have the opportunity to say, no, I'd love it, I'd love everything within 15 minutes, and what, by the way, can I have more parks and nurseries for the kids and more hospitals, and if you're going to do everything within 15 minutes, I would love to have all the incentives to make sure that's there, and if we're going to do that, I'd rather not have giant plant pots put in or surveillance cameras. If you're going to...
The surveillance cameras always go in first. And the restrictions going first.
Yeah.
They tell you about this lovely 15-minute city with, beaches and parks, but they never go in.
No.
It's the camera with 30 feet up with spikes on it that you can't get to.
So I don't understand that. If they want people to be in these 15-minute cities, if it's so desirable... then give us the carrots, don't give us the stick.
Yeah.
But clearly we can see that they want to get rid of cars, and so therefore part of the thing is, if you go this way, we'll penalise you because you've been a bad boy and infringed what we've decided. They have decided for us.
And of course, to go one step further, I mean, if you take Sadiq Khan Jules, he ordered all the cameras before the consultation was finished, or even before it started, perhaps.
Yeah.
So it was and talk about a fait accompli.
Yeah.
That's like ANPR. It's already in.
Yeah. We're going to do it.
Oh, geez, that's it.
And we've heard all through the lockdown the stories of. I mean, a gentleman came round yesterday and he said, on the M4, I think it was the M4. He said the day after the lockdown, he had to make this long journey, about 350 miles, in order to get back home because he was somewhere else. And he said, as I drove, it was very weird. There was nobody on the roads. And then as I came into London, there were thousands of workers of, he said, different nationality, but how do you know that? But anyway, there were thousands of workers putting up what he believed to be either cameras or 4G, 5G. And they were, we were supposed to be under a pandemic with a virus flying around, yet all these workers are out there busy doing a job because everybody else was hidden inside, told not to go outside.
If one were of a conspiratorial mindset,
which of course we're not in any shape or form,
one might think that that was one of the reasons for the the lockdown so they could get all this infrastructure in place
whilst
we weren't looking.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't. Yeah, obviously I wouldn't.
I couldn't dream of
suggest that that's.
No, but
something so dastardly.
you know, in this day and age where there's so many weird things going on, and we sort of see this in the motion pictures that are now being at the cinemas, you kind of think, well, maybe these things do happen in certain societies in which they behave like that. I mean, you only have to look at China.
Yeah.
And you start to think, blimey, do we want to really live under that sort of regime here in good old Blighty?
Yeah, I mean, some people call it predictive programming, don't they? Is that you introduce something fictional, even though it's horrible,
yes,
in order to get you to believe that it might actually be something that will happen.
Yes.
So I mean, this is why most television and films are unwatchable these days. Although, having said that, I haven't had the television for 6 years, so
I was going to say, do you have a television?
Yeah. And of course, I've got two Odeon cinema cards that were given to me for my birthday and Christmas. Are still unused. Because there's nothing worth watching.
So if anyone would like some free Odeon cards, you could turn that from Odeon to Odious, I suppose.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that.
No.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the company Odeon, in case you wanted to sue us. It was just a play on words for the fun of it. Just purely whimsical. Thank you very much.
Hashtag odious.
Yeah. Hashtag odious. And what odious films have you seen out there would be... I mean, people keep telling me in the emails, I saw this film the other day, and then suddenly a train crash happens, which emulates exactly that, as has been recently
in Ohio,
seen
I believe.
Yeah, in Ohio, of all places. And yet only a week or two before there was a film with the same storyline.
Yeah, and the same people who were playing the extras were the people doing the clear up in the real thing.
Were they?
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
I mean, it beggars belief. And the thing is, with all this going on, I mean, you and I are in the same sort of trying to tell people what we see and what we hope is not really happening, yet it seems blatantly obvious it is. And yet other people, we met up earlier and we had a lovely fish and chip breakfast, as it were. Not fish and chip, but, nice English breakfast type thing, looking through the window of this cafe. And the world is going about its business as if there's nothing to worry about. And yet both you and I have on our shoulders this grim feeling of the juggernaut that's coming down at 100 miles an hour, and nobody seems to know.
Yeah, well, 127,000 people know of your subscribers.
My subscribers are aware of it, but they may be some cross. They may also be, some of them may be watching you.
Well, one would hope so.
And hopefully they will go and watch you. And I'll put the link in the description. Yeah. So do go and watch Steve, Citizen X.
Yeah, you won't be scared off. That's for sure. Yeah.
Do you get that?
No.
Do you get people saying you're saying a whole load of rubbish?
No, not really. I mean, anybody who comes to my channel kind of knows what it's about, I think.
So this is the other thing is, once you get going and you start talking about these things, are we just talking to the converted?
Well, that is a danger. It is a danger. And when you end up speaking with proper normies, you think, oh, this person doesn't know what I know. Yeah. And there's a feeling that, maybe we're all being led down a path we shouldn't ought to be led down. But, as we were saying earlier, I mean, the consequences of us being wrong are that people can laugh at us.
Yeah.
The consequences of us being right and nobody listening are really quite terrible.
Exactly.
So
and you're quite familiar with what normal people do, because you do you don't just do the YouTube, you go out onto the street.
Yeah, I do somebody was describing it as outreach the other day, which I thought which sounds a bit social workerish, doesn't it?
Yes.
But I do a stall, which is just my table with some leaflets, and I did it quite a few times last summer and the autumn. And I just let people come up and speak to me. And I wasn't very forceful because I don't like to get into people's faces. But then I got some help with a chap who was like-minded. And, he's a bit of a gobshite, actually, if you know, to not put too fine a point on it. So he's quite good for that. And so me and him do it together, and that's a lot more successful. And last time we did it, we get people who come by and then they kind of want to help us out.
Wow.
So, you know...
So do you do it as I was just... When you said he was a bit of a gobshite, I got this sort of impression then that it was like a market stall where you go, 15 minutes it is, get your 15 minutes it is here, 25 pence a pound. Come on, love, would you like a 15? What about digital ID? Got a lovely digital ID for you. There you go, love. Oh, how about some CBDCs? They're all weird, 10 a penny at the moment. Get them whilst they're hot.
Yeah. I like that idea.
It'd be quite funny to do that, wouldn't it?
Could you write that down?
Yeah, certainly. All right, we'll just rewind the spiel.
Yeah.
But I think that's very magnanimous of you to get out onto the street and face people. Do you ever have any problem with officers of the what can we call them these days? You know, they used to be constables, you know, who were real living men and women of the society, but now they're very much
fascist
more...
paramilitaries.
Yeah, the fascist paramilitaries.
That's the word I think you're looking for.
That's exactly the word. You pronounced it so much with more force than I could.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, a couple of times back, it's just one of those things, you know. The mundanity of ordinary life interferes, because we had 2 WPCs come up, but just as they were coming out, I had to pack up because my parking ticket was about to run out, so I couldn't speak to them.
Yeah.
But last week, my colleague Mark, he saw a copper across the road, and he went over and talked to him for 10 minutes. Actually, he actually went over and and talked right to him. So, and he's one of these guys who likes to sort of try and get one over on people, you know.
Oh, right.
So he, you know, he likes to get people into knots, and so I was just talking to the old ladies and stuff, who are actually quite charming, and they're some of the most awake people, actually.
Yes, I can
imagine.
Well, you see that age will make them aware of what things were like and what things are like now. I think the young are the ones who just don't know.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, and and the young are the hardest to get to.
Yes.
But it's difficult talking to teenagers and stuff, because you don't want to sort of bother them, and they're not interested and they're on their phones. But the reason I did the stall was because we're not going to convert anybody else online. Anybody who's online
they've already found.
They're already on our side. So we've got to find the people who don't know anything about it.
That's an interesting point.
The most interesting and the most rewarding people are the people who you tell them things and they go,
I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And they're genuinely shocked. They're genuinely gobsmacked. And they say, I can't believe this is happening. And there are all varying degrees of that. You get a lot of people who, it's the nature of the beast. They come up and they want to, because they sort of feel that you're going to agree with them anyway. So you get a lot of those people. You get a lot of people, you hand them a leaf and go, no, not interested, mate, not interested, mate. And they just
disappear.
And then every so often you get somebody who's a bit obstreperous, but it's nothing you can't handle.
No.
And when I first started it, I had to make myself go. I had to make myself do it. I'd do it from 10 until 2, and I'd sit there. And early on, when I was letting people come to me, I might only speak to 8 people in 4 hours, but I'd have good conversations with them. But now we've got somebody else, and he's of a particular personality type, as I was saying. We end up speaking to a lot more people, and so that emboldens me a bit, and and hand out. And I need to be more organised. You need to have a big banner, but we've got these leaflets. We hand those out, and often you hand it out to someone and go, "Oh, right," and they'll take it and they'll wander off.
Yeah.
And then you'll see them 10 minutes later walking the other way, reading the leaflet.
Oh, right.
See, because they will read the leaflet.
Yes.
The leaflets are great because they will read it, even if they put it in the bin. They'll read it. If you put it through someone's door, they'll read it. And when I went back to my car, I had 4 left. Put them under the windscreen of each car before I got to my car, and they might just go, "Oh, what's this rubbish?" And they might.
How do you lay out your leaflet? What do you say on it? You're all doomed.
I can send you I can send you a little.
But what's the headline?
The headline is "What will a cashless society mean?"
Right.
And it gives the pros.
Yeah.
And there's only one of them.
What is that? Pros?
Convenience.
Oh, convenience. Yes, of course.
And then there's all all the cons that I could think of.
Yeah.
You know, like it can be programmable. You know, they'll have an expiry date. You know, you'll be tracked with every purchase you make. You know, we know all this stuff. You know, we all know this stuff.
Did you say we'll be tracked?
We'll be, yeah.
Oh, crikey, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So did you say it was programmable?
Yeah, programmable.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah. And
I've got a whole load of them in here.
You can't buy. You might not be able to buy petrol or meat or go on holiday or. You know.
Blimey!
Yeah. So
if only I told my viewers the right thing.
Yeah.
Damn! I've been telling them how marvellous it is. The thing is, and so nobody's actually prevented. The council haven't come out and said you can't put your table here.
Not as yet. And
for God's sake, whatever you do, and I don't mean to take the Lord's name in vain, of course, but don't start praying.
Oh, yes.
The minute you start praying, the police will just descend on you and have you.
Yeah,
They'll
exactly.
take you away.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if you've got wrong think going up in here, so just don't engage the brain. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Handing out leaflets telling us we're all going to die in a horrible, agonising death from 5G radiation. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. But don't, whatever you do, start to sit there and go, oh, I hope everything's all right. Please make it good, because that you might actually alter the universe.
Yeah, that will be intolerable,
and that would be dreadful.
Although having said that, there was last time, and there is often a Jehovah's Witness bunch who are doing stuff just a little bit further down. So, but they haven't got carted off yet.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, but maybe they're not praying.
Ah, yeah, no, you can preach. I think it's all right to preach.
Oh, not pray.
But not pray. So you'll be all right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but it's interesting that you have gone out onto the street and done that, and maybe I should do some more of that, because I do get occasionally people saying to me in the emails, you know, Rich, it's all very well talking about it, but we need to get off our backsides and do something, and you know, I think, well, the videos reach a lot of people. And I do want to try and offer solutions if I can, because I think if you just frighten people, then there is that sense that, well, what can I do? I can't do it. I can't stop the government. How do I stop, you know, great big juggernaut of the government and the WEF and the World Health Authority, who's now got my sovereignty or whatever that means. And I can't go, please stop. And so I think people do get frightened. So one has to try, I think, to have solutions. So even if it is standing in the street.
Well, you could argue, couldn't you, that Mahatma Gandhi dismantled the British Empire?
Well,
you could, one man. Yeah. You could argue that.
Yeah,
couldn't you? I mean,
I've got his screwdriver over there. Actually, I bought it on eBay, and it
that must be worth a lot. Yeah.
With that, he just went round undoing the nuts. Yeah. No, but it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I do. Like I say, you know, the internet has been a great boon to us, and I do feel that protest is worth it. And you know, and the big protests, you know, you may not think that they do very much, but one of the big things that they do is that they just embolden people.
Yes.
You go up there and there's tens of thousands of other people who think just as you do. And when you're sitting at your computer at home and then you think, oh, this is all great, and then you go out and you speak to people in the pub and they just call you a conspiracy theorist.
Exactly.
You feel alone. And then you go, you know, I remember I went up to Park Lane and it was jammed. It was jammed as far as I could see with people. And I just felt, you know, wonderful after that, you know, and you do need that, because there's always someone who's going to say, well, that's what they want you to try and do, isn't it?
I think if they get ugly, because the media, being the swines that they are, will always focus on the ugly people. Not the ugly people. Sorry, that came out wrong. But
they haven't focused on me too much so far. Yeah.
I don't mean that. And what I remember is they'll you know, if somebody is aggressive or nasty, they'll frame it in a way that these violent, you know, far right or extremists have come out, and they'll frame it like that, when actually and I made that mistake in one of my videos, because I'd seen an Oxford protest, and I'd said in one of the videos that I didn't think this was the right thing, and I'd fallen, you know, and it's so easy to do, to fall under the spell. God, people have been violent because they're angry, and we need to show that we don't want it, that we don't consent, but we can be civilised, because, as you say, if it's an angry mob, then the government have a legitimacy to bring out the, you know, martial law and say, look, everyone's rioting. Whereas if people aren't rioting, and actually it's done, as you say, and it's a process where people are angry, but they're not showing their anger aggressively. They're just saying, look, we don't want this, we're not part of it. and it emboldens more. And the other thing, of course, people will see that and go, what's it about? And come out of their doors. If everybody appears to be nice and genuine.
Yeah, we know how, how vile the media were with the trucker protests, weren't
yes,
we?
Well, exactly.
And I mean, when they finally broke it up, do you remember they all those policemen with, helmets on, and the ones at the front line were just carrying heavy wooden clubs. They didn't look like it was like a normal piece of police equipment.
No,
it's like they just rattled them all off. Like you take them, and behind them were other policemen. And behind them were other policemen with automatic rifles in case they got overwhelmed. And if they're one of those truckers, even one, that turned up to that thing with a baseball bat, just to defend himself, you can imagine what the media, they would have been even on every front page all over the world. They came prepared to do violence. And I think those truckers need to be deified because they were so restrained. I'm not sure I could have been.
No, and when you are pushed, it's very easy. It's human nature, isn't it?
And they'll be tough guys as well. And truckers, they'll be tough guys. They won't be pansies at all. And they restrained themselves magnificently, I think. So I take your point. If you turn up looking ugly, that's what will happen.
Yeah. So. And now that we know. And of course we've seen it for over the since the pandemic with all of that when people have protested, that the media will pick and choose which protests they allow to be seen. If you're on the woke side, the extreme left, and you're trying to sort of let every nasty sexualization happen into schools, and you're standing up for the sexualization of children, they'll let those sort of things happen. But if you're anti that and you say actually children should have a childhood, they should be free to dream in fairies or Mickey Mouse or whatever it is,
and play dress up doesn't mean you have to cut body parts off.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I mean, it's like the there's an example of that. The double standards. When the Black Lives Matter thing was going on, there was lots of people quoting Martin Luther King saying, the riot is the language of the unheard, as if it's like understandable.
Yes.
But they wouldn't have done that for the truckers.
No.
They wouldn't have done that for anti-vaxxers, wouldn't have done that for anybody, would they?
So you have to be, you've got to be, you've got to be so careful because that every step you make is going to be highlighted. Any bad step, any mistake that you make. Is going to be highlighted and you'll be kicked down for it. So anybody who manages to sort of navigate all of that and get away with it. I mean, I suppose the worst thing is that happens, and what they do is just don't report it.
Yeah.
It never happens.
Yeah, that's a good, that's a well-used tool, isn't it? To do nothing.
Do nothing. Or to say there's 100 people outside when what they mean is there's 100,000. They just left off.
I was outside the BBC once, it must have been 20,000 people there. Not a whisper of it. Not a whisper.
Yeah.
We're not reporting it because we can't see it.
We can't see it.
It's out there, mate. Can't see it.
You see, they often wonder why those studios are soundproofed. It's not actually to, to make the sound any better. It's to keep the protesters' noise out. Otherwise, you'd hear it coming through the channels. Where your channel is going quite well, and obviously you'd like more viewers and all the rest of it. And the worrying thing for me at the moment with my channel is there's so many of these things coming down, but I don't want to have a new oppressive thing to talk about because we've had so many. The Precision Engineering Act, the animal precision, the cities and the ID cards and the digital banks. You kind of want it to stop. Where do you see the future going? Do you think we are making a difference, and are you optimistic, I suppose?
Well, I think
what I'm trying to get to.
I'm not really an optimistic person per se in my nature. I am a bit of a pessimist, but I think maybe it's just I can't allow myself to believe that they will be victorious, that they will win. I just can't. Maybe it's just because I don't want to stare down that black hole. But I do think if all of us, all the people who've protested hadn't protested, we'd already be in the gulag. I do think, and I think we just have to keep going, and we have to. I mean, I think one of the biggest things, I mean, particularly about the COVID thing, is that people must be held to account.
Oh,
I think that is so important, and it isn't just for revenge, although I consider that to be reason enough. But I think it's because if they're not held to account, they'll just do it again.
Yes,
they'll just back off for 2 or 3 years, and they'll do it again. And if we can get some people sent to prison for long periods, then we'll have made a precedent. And
well, you can imagine if you had, let's say what was he called? The not his actual name, but his position, the health secretary, and the prime minister, whomever that were. I can't remember their names. Whoever they were, but without actually mentioning their name. If they went down for actually causing, well, serious crime. Let's just leave it as vague as that for apply to the terms and conditions of the platform we're on. I think that would make a lot of the other MPs think twice about being complicit to anything that was happening. If something, let's say, just off the top of my head, let's say that there was a problem with those feathered things that fly around in the sky, and that for some reason that they would, I don't know, not attack, but they carried something which made the countryside difficult to go in because, ticks might get the same disease and you could catch it, and so they were pushing people out. And then there was, I don't know, some medicine that was just happened to be handily stored in hangars that had been brought in by pilots. That sort of odd scenario that only a madman would dream up. And I'm clearly mad. If that was about to happen, but the prime minister of the day or those people who were complicit in the previous one had done it, I think people would go, hang on a minute, I don't think we'll run that story again.
Yeah, I don't want to spend 10 years inside.
Yeah,
I'm quite happy on my MP salary.
And maybe as an MP I might actually work for the people.
Yeah, because
this time round
it might actually pay me to do that.
Yeah,
because in addition to not ending up in jail, I might have some advancement and have some.
And MPs, surely,
and not be afraid of walking the street.
Well, exactly. I mean, they must have. I would just think they must have a feeling that. Wouldn't it be nice to be liked?
You do wonder that, don't you?
And when people come to them, as I know my viewers have with the MPs, and they've shared the letters that the MP has sent back saying, "Oh no, we totally agree with it. It's perfectly safe and effective." Whatever the thing is that they're talking about, it's always safe and effective. It's almost as if every MP has got the same directions or instructions to spout. You just think that those MPs would think, actually, there's a lot of people who are coming to me slightly concerned about something that happened recently, and maybe I ought to go back to the cabinet and say, actually, there's a lot of people. Oh, what do you mean, be quiet, or something nasty will happen? Oh, right, no, I'll just tell the constituents to bog off then. It just seems a weird system that we've got, and it's completely broken.
It is, yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, I think that all of our institutions are completely broken, and it's difficult to know where to go with that. But you've come up with some of your guests have come up with some good ideas, and the common law thing. I think we should press that. They keep telling us, "Don't be so silly." Don't be so silly. That doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean that. You're just imagining
fairy tales.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they'll do. They'll gaslight you, tell you you're just being ridiculous. Oh, don't be so silly. You don't know about anything about law. But law is made unnecessarily complicated. There's no reason why it should be so complicated.
Well, but it's you've got to see what you're not understanding, Steve. Is that these poor bankers, these poor people who just really don't have enough money, have designed this system to make it a little bit easier for them so that they can get more of because you're obviously an incredibly rich man and not paying enough taxes.
Obviously, yeah.
And I'm sure these bankers, these poor bankers, they would really like to see you not have quite so much, and so they'll get you into the courts and then extract that money through threats and menaces. It's a lovely system. I don't know why you're moaning about it.
And the politicians, obviously, they don't have enough power. either.
They, I mean, there they are in this democratic society, and they sort of spell it
They just can't do anything.
Tyranny, isn't it? Tyranny.
Yes, that's right.
They don't quite understand, they read democratic and yet they think dictator. That's clearly they relish more power.
Yeah.
Bless. I mean, you've got to feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we try
Who
to
doesn't
stop
want
them.
more power?
Well,
wouldn't you like the power of life and death over everybody?
Well, I'd like to retain the power of life and maybe the power of freedom to be able to go wherever I want unhindered without being infringed, perhaps by some all-seeing eye that George Orwell sort of conjured up.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, I very early on in the pandemic, freedom became such a very hard sell.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost as if it was like a dirty word. It's just the weirdest thing.
And the weirdest, yes, by the very people who were oppressed.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
The people who were actually told to stay inside, and you'd say, do you think that's a good idea? God, of course it's a good idea. You can't go outside there. For goodness sake, who do you think you are? You can't have freedom to walk about the streets whenever you like in front of that sun with its vitamin D. Yeah. Have you gone raving mad? Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. And put a mask on when you're talking to me. I want to hear you muffled. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. Govern me harder, Daddy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it, innit? Yeah.
Oh, dear. Well, listen, Steve, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you.
Likewise.
Thank you for coming down to the studio and seeing that. Somebody said to me, isn't your studio just a screen and you've just put in a picture behind?
No, it's all real, look. It's all real.
It's all real. Look. That reel-to-reel recorder actually, well, it doesn't actually work, but you can do it manually. It's broken.
Shall I do it manually?
Yeah, go on.
There we go. See, it does move.
It actually goes the other way around.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, that should go.
It burns out the motor right now.
Yes, probably. Yeah. I need somebody who can fix a Revox A77. If anybody's out there, you can fix that for. It'd be lovely to have it running.
It'd be nice to have it running all the time.
Yeah. And then when the tape runs out, you say, "I'm sorry, I've got to go." Yeah. It's like Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just get cut off. It'd be lovely. So if anyone can fix a Revox A77, do get in touch because it would be lovely to have that running. But yeah, so, well, anyway, Steve, it's been a joy. Your YouTube channel is Citizen X.
Citizen X, yeah. I'm also on Twitter as well. But, you just have to... It's actually... I'm because of the way the Twitter thing works, it's...
difficult to find.
Yeah, well, it's at Citizen2528 something.
Is that your prison number?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you do wonder, don't you? Yeah. Anyway, look, we can put it at the bottom of the video, can't we?
Yeah, we can put it at the bottom of the video. That would be great. Yeah. So do tune in and check out what have you got a video in the... Oh, you've had a lovely journey down south, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean...
Will that go up on your channel?
Yeah, it'll go up.
Some point?
The driving videos is nice drive through the countryside. That might be...
Are you talking about stuff in that one?
No, but I'll probably put it on afterwards.
Oh, yeah. I see. Yeah, so there we go. So do check him out. Yeah. It's been lovely.
Yeah, likewise.
What really works for me, I mean, I do a lot of Zoom interviews, as everybody will know, but it's nice having somebody in the studio. And apologies that we've only got one camera. Do you watch Redacted?
Sometimes, yes.
I like their studio setup with the little cameras that they've got, so you can cut between, and have
that American bunch.
Yeah. I mean, they're a nice couple, but I every time I watch it, I'm looking at the studio setup, thinking, "Oh, that would be nice. Camera there, just to make it,
Well, I'm quite jealous of your studio, really, to be honest. I particularly like the old on-air sign up here.
What people don't realise is this is actually the master bedroom of my 2 up, 2 down house, and
Don't believe a word of it. Don't believe a word. It's an enormous country pile.
My big Georgian country pile.
Yeah, he's trying to plead poverty.
Yes. So I'll now get the chauffeur to bring your car round
from the stable block. Yeah.
From the stable block, yes, and I hope you can manage to get out of the mile-long drive.
That's right. Yeah.
So sorry, but I always get my guests to come in the tradesman's entrance anyway. I don't want my neighbours to see. After all, they'll all be out on their horses hunting at the moment. You probably saw them.
Yes. That's right, yeah. And all your serfs.
And all my serfs, yes. Yeah. Could we have some more coffee and cucumber sandwiches, please? If only. It's been good fun. I love having people in because it's such a nice way to have a conversation. Do check him out at Citizen X, and in the meantime I'll be back no doubt this week. As I say, I've got some interesting guests coming up for the channel. But from Steve and I, here in the studio, in my jolly...
The butler will show me out, will he?
The butler will show... Well, the footman.
The footman.
Yes, sorry. You have to be to have a sort of sir in front of your name for my butler to... He's
sorry
quite
to be so vulgar.
Yes. Just the lackey, the boy.
Yeah.
Anyway, until next time, from Steve and I, goodbye.
Bye. See ya.